Hello everybody, it's me, Fiona Timms, otherwise known as White Zulu, author of my autobiography of the same name, and I welcome you all to another chapter of my book. I do hope you're all enjoying my life story, and I must thank all of you for being such dedicated subscribers, especially those who have written such complimentary comments below my videos. They are much appreciated. I would like to point out that the previous South African flag hanging on the wall behind me is not a political statement. It is simply a piece of history in the background of my first 50 years of my life, being born and growing up in my beloved mother country, South Africa. My autobiography, White Zulu, is not a political commentary, and frankly describes my experiences of growing up with the Zulu tribe as my family. That flag is simply a piece of cloth signifying the history of South Africa. It was originally used by the Union of South Africa from 1928 to 1961, and later the Republic of South Africa until 1994. His own route to work was on a flyover across the worst part. He sailed over the South Coast Road, a dual carriageway nightmare, and into the dock area, whereas I had to fight my way along miles of this notorious road. Sometimes I was swept along, swallowed up by the raging torrent of buses and taxis, and at other times had to claw my way home against the worst of it. The other problem I'd been struggling with was that the contraceptives I'd been taking for so many months had never agreed with me. I'd been back to the nice GP a couple of times, as the first trial dose sent my blood pressure sky high. These were very early days of the pill, and it was still very much untested as a long-term contraceptive. He'd suggested I tried the 3-month injection, which had a slow release, but that was no better. Both remedies made me feel really sluggish, and I suddenly began to put on weight, a problem I'd never had in my entire life, rather the reverse. And it came as a horrible surprise to me when I shopped for new outfits for work that I found I had to buy a size larger. I hated that and the voracious appetite the hormone pills gave me. Another new and unpleasant surprise. Before that, I could take or leave food and barely gave it a thought. Now I was cooking up beautiful dinners every evening, so proud of my new culinary skills, but also eating more than I'd ever eaten before. I was eating regularly now as well, and that was another new development in my life. Fred was over 6 foot tall, lean and rangy, and always had a good appetite. But he strode all over a big construction site all day, often in ankle-deep sand. And I sat at a desk or behind the wheel of my car. I'd always walked a lot, to and fro from Nora House to college, or more frequently the beach. Then I'd taken my brisk daily walk to work every morning for nearly a year. Brisk, because I'd always left getting up until the last minute. I wasn't an early morning person by any stretch of the imagination. So my trots over to the office had been to beat the 8 o'clock chimes from the City Hall clock. I'd had to be fast enough to zip into my typist's chair at the very second the Zulu messenger opened the smart engraved glass entrance doors to the firm. On our trips to the farm, I'd stopped riding altogether because Fred hated horses so much and walked everywhere with him. We took long walks in the bush if it was too misty to go up to the lake and fish, or strolled the length of the river banks, Fred with his trout rod, casting into any likely-looking pools for the elusive indigenous brown trout which might be lying there. We had 5,000 acres of beautiful countryside, and I wanted to show Fred every stick and stone of the place. I'd enjoyed my entire lifetime, of exploring the ranch, and, with the dogs at our heels, we roamed everywhere. Now I felt lethargic, unfit, and when we went up to the farm, I got out of breath and tired on our walks, having to sit on a boulder and take a rest every now and again. This was anathema to me. Ever since I'd been a skinny kid, I'd never felt tired other than at school when I was growing so fast and felt unable to cope with the rigors of our strict daily school routine. Even between rests in the dreaded SAN, I was still athletic, good at tennis and riding, and could run like a buck. On the pill, I now got migraines from the oppressive Durban heat and began a pattern of insomnia that plagues me to this day. Having always been able to sleep like a log, now I was on this drug, I became a light, restless sleeper and suffered from anxiety and occasionally palpitations from worry at the thought of having to get up at 6 so as to be in the office by 8. The hormones were affecting my life in so many ways, and not in a good way either, and I desperately wanted to stop taking the pill. Finally, after a lot of discussion between us, I asked Fred if I could stop taking the pill and hang the consequences. He was ambivalent at first. I think he was afraid that any new development might rock the steady boat of our new married life, which he clearly enjoyed so much. It was a new experience for Fred to have such pleasurable constancy and stability in his own life, and he was loving every minute of it. He had a job he enjoyed, a quiet life at home with good food, good company, and the opportunity to fish in the best surroundings and conditions he'd ever experienced. He had no stress in his life any longer, other than the calls and letters from his mother, and he quickly became immune to her ramblings. He was in clover. Fred finally agreed, rather reluctantly, to let me give being free of the pill for a while a try. After all, they say that if a woman has been on the pill for so long, she'll take ages to fall pregnant, he reassured himself. I've read somewhere it can take even years for a cycle to come back to normal. So go on, give it up, and let's see what happens, he added philosophically. A month after giving up the pill, I missed a period. I waited for a few weeks and then went to the doc for a test. It took several days for the results to come back, and then he called me in for a consultation. Congratulations, he beamed at me over his desk. You're expecting a baby. Both Fred and I were completely taken aback. We'd expected months and months of waiting for my system to settle down from the upheaval of the hormone pills before anything happened. But we'd had an immediate first strike. It took several weeks for us both to recover from the surprise, longer for Fred, as subconsciously I'd been more than ready to give up my job, settle down for good, and start a family. Possibly triggered by Diana's visible glow and the joy they were experiencing, making plans for a nursery, complete with a wicker crib. I'd longed for the same. Now that we were going to be permanently settled with a new baby on the way, I asked if we could get the kittens I'd been longing for ever since I'd seen the perfect, safe little haven of a back garden, complete with that giant fig tree to play in. It hadn't seemed fair to have chosen kittens from a rescue centre and then leave them alone all day while we both went off to work. So we'd put off the kitten idea for a while. Now it seemed a perfect time to get them. I was about to resign from my job and stay at home, so I'd enjoy the company of a pair of cats. I'd spent my life with cats around me, and the place felt empty and deserted without one or two about. We drove up to the SPCA in Hillcrest, where there were rows and rows of cages of orphaned or abandoned puppies, kittens, cats, and dogs. It was heartbreaking to climb out of the car to be greeted by all those desperate howls and yaps, interspersed by the plaintive mews of stray cats. It was such a difficult decision to make, and after a whole morning of walking about the endless cages, I chose a newly weaned tabby tom kitten and a similar aged black and white female. We signed the forms agreeing to have them both neutered as soon as the time came and drove off, both kittens tucked into the front of my jersey. They were a bit wild to begin with, and one of them disappeared completely, worrying me to the point of despair. When I picked up a small brown paper bag lying on the kitchen table and found the little tabby curled up in there fast asleep. We always took them with us when we went up to the farm. I went to my bosses and quietly told them I was giving a month's notice and the reason why. They were thrilled for me, wished me well, and the office gave me a warm farewell party, complete with a big cake, champagne, and a very festive atmosphere. It was traditional to wait 3 months before announcing that one was expecting, as Mum would put it. In her opinion, the word pregnant only referred to farm animals. So we hugged our secret to ourselves for what felt like ages. Once previously, we'd employed a big plump Zulu woman to come in and clean our little house for us, after I'd become overwhelmed by the constant sight of an unmade bed, dirty dishes in the sink, and the curtains still drawn after a long day at work. Nicolette, my older sister's live-in nanny, had a relative who lived in Umlazi and would come in by taxi a few days a week and blitz the place, including doing our washing and ironing, which I never seemed to be able to get the hang of. It was all washed by hand, as nobody in South Africa owned a washing machine. There were far too many willing black hands to do the job, and many others for a fair wage. It didn't seem a lot of money to us as we both worked, and Fred earned a very good salary as a senior civil engineer at Christiani and Nielsen. But it was a lot to a Zulu woman who was the breadwinner for a family often as big as 12 or more children. Her weekly wage could buy them a £50 sack of mealie meal, dried beans, milk and sugar, still leaving her with some change. It suited everyone perfectly, and Luciga, our new maid, unable to speak a word of English, valued her job with us, as she was unable to get work anywhere else because so few white South African employers could speak even rudimentary Zulu or Xhosa, the main African tribal languages. We got on very well and had a good working relationship. One night we were sitting outside in the garden enjoying the night sounds when I was suddenly overcome by a wave of nausea. It took me completely by surprise, and I had to excuse myself and slip away into our house, where I lay on the bed, my head spinning and my stomach churning. After a while, Fred came quietly in and sat on the edge of my bed and asked me what was wrong. I feel so sick. I wonder if it's morning sickness. I rang my mother, who confirmed that it was. Your 3 months is only 2 and a bit months, but it feels right if we just keep this news within the family, said Mum, and she went back to tell Dad that another grandchild was on the way. I continued to be plagued by nausea and sickness. Starting so early on, it soon became all-day sickness, and I spent half my life hanging upside down over the lavatory, heaving inelegantly. It made Fred very nervous to see me like this. I thought all your health problems would be over once you came off the pill, he said anxiously, as I dashed off to the loo for the umpteenth time that Saturday afternoon. So did I hiccuped after I came back. This is crazy. I can't believe anyone gets as sick as this so soon, and all day long during pregnancy. I don't know how much more of this I can take. I spoke to our GP at my checkup, and he said there was a new anti-nausea drug called thalidomide, and I ought to try it. But I was tired of drugs. They always seemed to backfire on me, so I declined and soldiered on, trying old remedies like nibbling on dried digestive biscuits and sipping water. Nothing helped. That's it for this week. More to come. As I said, we're getting very close now to emigrating to live in Scotland. And so look out for that one. Thanks so much for listening. Hello to Tony, New Zealand, Clive, Henry LaRue, Scott. I know you all enjoy these. And also, thanks so much to John Moslane for being my sound engineer and making all this possible. I'll see you next week, and thanks for listening. Goodbye. That is all for the time being, and there's more to come next week. I would like to thank John Moslane for putting aside his Friday afternoons to help me produce these videos. Without him, I could not do this. I would also like to thank Sean van Vuren for his sterling work in uploading my videos to my YouTube channel, adding the photos, as well as managing my channel so professionally. If you would like to know more about my other works, I have written 5 books in all, and each one is autobiographical. Please visit my website at www.whitezulubook.com, where you will find a lot more information as well as plenty of photographs. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed my life story, and there is plenty more to come. A thumbnail photo will be attached each week, and thank you so much for all your support and all the very kind remarks you make in complimenting me on my work. I really appreciate it. Goodbye.